concept of competition. Okay, so there's two types of competition, which is intra-specific competition and also inter-specific competition. So intra-specific competition is when individuals of the same species are competing with the same resources, such as, for example, food. Okay, for example, food, space, right? So even mates within the same species, that is intra-specific competition. They are living in the same area and they are competing for the same resources. But as for the inter-specific competition, such as, for example, international, beyond, over with other nations, for example. So inter is competition between individuals of different species that are living in the same area, and so they are competing for the limiting resources, food, space. Okay, so that is inter-specific competition. So and then we have looked at the concept on competitive exclusion. This one here, kind of. So competitive exclusion, where two individuals of different species. Sorry, two species that are living in the same area, they have overlapping niche. Kan? So overlapping niche means that they are occupying in the same area, they are competing for the same food source. So for the concept of competitive exclusion, the strongest species will dominate because they compete better, they reproduce much more faster, for example. And then as for the other species, they are the weaker ones, so either they will die off from that competition, they cannot survive, or they have to move out of that area and find other area to survive. Okay, so that is competitive exclusion. Kan? So the weaker competitor will either go to extinction or experience an evolutionary or behavioral shift. They have to adapt. They have to change their behavior, maybe their features, so that they can survive using different niche. Okay. So, okay, so that one is on competitive exclusion. So today's lecture, we are going to continue with the next concept, which is species niche, which is this one we are going to look at on the concept of fundamental niche and also realized niche. Okay, fundamental and realized niche. So as a result of competition, a species' fundamental niche may differ from its realized niche. Fundamental niche and realized niche. Let's look at the definition. Fundamental niche is the potential ecological niche that an organism could occupy if there is no competition from other species. Let's look at the definition first. So, realized niche, the portion of a species' fundamental niche that is actually occupies due to interspecific competition. So, if you look at this diagram here, okay, so fundamental niche is what is basically the niche that an organism can occupy in the ideal condition without no competition. So obviously when there is no competition, so the fundamental niche will be bigger. Kan? So there's no competition, so the species can survive. They have no problem in getting space, they have no problem in getting the food, they have no problem in surviving. But when there's other species living in that same area, so this will create competition. Can so when there's a competition occurs, so somehow the two species that are competing have to let go of some of that sources to the other species, and so therefore the niche will be smaller. Okay, so this is what we call it as realized niche. Actually, maybe same as fundamental niche. It depends. Okay. So realized niche. So the portion of a species fundamental niche that is actually occupied due to interspecific competition, due to the species have to compromise, they have to compete, kan. So therefore the realized niche will be usually will be smaller. Okay, but then again it depends. So let's look at an example. So two barnacle species, which is Cathamalus stellatus and also Cathamalus balanoides, have stratified distribution. So ini which this is yang ni lah, Cathamalus barnacles, okay, barnacles yang dekat batu-batu tu kan ada macam cikerang-cikerang tu kan. So, these are the two species, Cathamalus and Cathamalus and also Balanus. So here we look at here. So the Balanus, as you can see, they live on the lower part of the rock. So they attach to a rock, okay, near the ocean. Okay, so catamalas are usually found on high tide zone where there is best adaptation for survival. That is catamalas. High tide zone. They can survive uh, in area of that stones that are much higher. So high tide zone. But for the balaners are consistently found on low tide zone, bahagian bawah yang dekat dengan air. Okay. So this is realized niche for respective species. So realized niche is when there's competition. In this case, the two barnacles are competing for space. Catamelus can live on the higher part of that rock, but the balaners, they have to have source of moisture. So they have to be on the lower part, okay, on the lower part of the rock. So low tide zone. So this is realized niche with the presence of competition. And then so an experiment was done. Okay, so determine if the distribution of catamalas is the best results of competition with balanus. Balanus is experimentally removed from the rock. So balanus yang duduk bahagian bawah kan, so dia kena ada source of moisture. Dia kena duduk kat kawasan yang lembap. Tapi kalau yang kata malas, dia kena duduk kat kawasan yang, dia boleh duduk kat kawasan yang kering. Tapi kata malas juga boleh duduk kat kawasan yang lembap. Macam tu, dia boleh occupy both region. So this is what we call it as fundamental niche. So kata malas, they can occupy both areas, the high tide and the low tide. For example, if we remove balanus, they can occupy the whole area from the upper part to the lower part of the road of the rock. Okay, so to determine if the distribution of catamalis is the result of competition with balanus is experimentally removed from the rock. Kita buang balanus tu, and then kita nak tengok sama ada catamalis ni dia boleh duduk dekat high tide saja ke, ataupun dia boleh occupy all from high to low tides. So when experiment was done, the balanus was removed, so catamalis can occupy the whole area from high to low tide. Okay, so catamalis spread into the region formerly occupied by balanus. So this is fundamental niche for catamalis. Fundamental niche is when there's no competition. There's no competition by the balanus, so but there's no competition for space, for example. So the fundamental niche for catamalis will be bigger compared to its realized niche when there's presence of competition posed by the balanus. Okay. So and then conclusion, competition makes the realized niche of catamalis much smaller than its fundamental niche. So ingat kalau realized niche, bila ada competition, so this reduces the niche of that organism. Okay, fundamental yang ideal, yang tak ada competition, so the fundamental niche will be bigger, but it depends on that certain organism. For example, if vice versa was done, contohnya kalau kita remove pula catamalis, okay, kalau kita remove catamalis ni kan, we remove the catamalis and the area here is empty kan, so balanus will only occupy the low tide. So because the balanus will only survive in area that has moisture. yang ada air, yang lembap. So dia takkan spread ke atas. Kalau balanus dia takkan spread ke atas. Okay, so for balanus, the fundamental niche is the same as the realized niche. So sama je. Ya, sebab tengoklah dia punya sifat dia, dia hanya nak kawasan yang lembap. Tapi kalau kata malas, dia boleh dua-dua. So when you remove the balanus, so the kata malas fundamental niche expand. Okay, when there's no competition. So it depends on the requirement of that organisms. Okay. So faham kalau untuk apa nama? Yalah, fundamental and realized niche. Okay. So next one, we are going to look at on the concept of overlapping niche. If you have question, you can ask on what we have touched. Okay. So two outcomes of overlapping niche: resource partitioning and character displacement. Okay, resource partitioning and character displacement. Okay, so yang ini kedua-dua konsep ni dia terhasil apabila terdapatnya competition. So these two are a way of organism adapting to reduce competition. So there's different species living in the same area. Kan, so they are competing for limiting resources, again food and space. Okay, so they have to adapt in order for them to be able to survive and in order for them to be able to reduce the competition. So two ways of how the organism adapt is one is through resource partitioning, second is through character displacement. Ini kedua-dua ni adalah disebabkan oleh competition. Organism have to adapt in order for them to survive. Okay, so let's look at the first one, which is the partitioning. Resource partitioning can lead to niche differentiation and enabling two species to coexist in the community. So for example, here we have 7 different species of Dominican Republic lizard, which is Anolis species, live in the close proximity and feed on insects and also small arthropods. Okay, kita baca dulu. Competition for food is reduced where each lizard species has different perch, thus occupying a different niche. Okay, so here is a certain habitat, for example, in this forest. Okay, so in this certain habitat, in this area where there's tree, there's the soil, there's the small shrubs, small shrubs, herbaceous plant underneath the smaller trees. Okay, so all these 7 different species of lizards, okay, they are living in the same habitat, they are living in the same area. So therefore, if these 7 different species uh, they have to adapt in order to reduce competition. So therefore they have to live in different areas in the same habitat. So for example, here you can find there's the Anolis species that lives on the ground or on the fence here, can, so up in the tree, so in the small bushes. So they will occupy different areas, so they occupy different niche, so different areas that they occupy within the same habitat. So this reduce competition, so this reduce competition for space, it reduces competition for food. For example, the one that lives on the ground here, so they may feed on small insects, okay, that are found on the ground here. So the one that lives up here, they may feed on, for example, other source of food. Maybe there's insects here, or there's even maybe the lizard can feed on the fruits of that tree, can. So so by separating the lizard into different areas, so this reduces the competition between the species. Okay, it says here, these Anolis species perch on fence, this here can on fence and other sunny surface. So this Anolis species usually perch on shady branches. So allows the different lizard species to reduce competition. Okay, so they can feed on different source of food. Okay, for example, for this type of resource partitioning. Okay, so then the next one is character displacement. So character displacement, competing species diverge. Keyword here is diverge in their physical characteristics. So maksudnya untuk reducekan competition ni through evolution, which which takes a long time. So in order to reduce competition, so the morphology of that organism changed, kan. So it depends on, for example, on the food source, again the food source. So let's look at that example for this one later. So due to evolution, nampak dia bukannya haiwan tu pindah terus dia berubah bentuk, dia morph, tak, dia it takes time. Okay, so due to evolution of traits best suited to the resources they use. Okay, so results from resource partitioning. So resource partitioning berlaku dulu, kan. So bila haiwan tu dah duduk kat tempat-tempat yang berbeza, so sumber makanan pun akan jadi berbeza. So disebabkan oleh sumber makanan tu berbeza, so the morphology of that organism will change and adapt so that they can get around that area. Okay, so competition is reduced when two species become more different, okay, in terms of their physical looks. Okay, so for example, here we have two different bird species. Okay, so it says here, the bird species, we call it as Galapagos finches, which is the scientific names is Geopizza fuliginosa and also Geopizza fortis. So this is the fortis one, Geopizza fortis. This is Geopizza fuliginosa. Okay, so as you can see, the physical morphology of these two birds is the big size. Okay, is the big size. Okay, so ada, kalau fortis, big size dia bigger. Okay, kalau fuliginosa, the big size is smaller. So by having different big size, they will feed on different food source. Okay, so for example, the fortis, when they have big size, they can feed on the bigger fruits. Okay, so kalau fuliginosa, so they can feed on the smaller fruits or the smaller apa nuts. Okay, so by having different features, so this allows the two species to be able to survive by feeding on different food source when they are living in the same area. Okay, so let's look at this example. Okay, so the first two graphs here, it shows you the big size of the two birds when they are living in different areas. Okay, when they are living in different areas, jauh, kan, jauh. So the two bird species will have big size of similar measurement. Okay, so around 8 to 12, around 10 lah macam tu, kan. So the big size is fairly the same size. Okay, so if the two species are geographically separated, duduk kat tempat yang berbeza, which we call it as allopatric population. Okay, so the size of the beak is the same because they are not competing for the same food, so therefore they can eat similar size seed. So dia carilah kacang-kacang yang pada buah-buah ke kacang-kacang ke pada pokok, kan, yang sama saiz. Tapi disebabkan kedua-dua bird ni duduk tempat yang berbeza, kan. Satu duduk kat island, satu duduk kat mainland. So kedua-dua spesies ni boleh ada physical character yang sama. So big size is fairly the same size. Okay. So where the two species are found living in the same area, can we call it as geographically overlapping? Kan, if the species are geographically overlapping, they live in the same area, we call this as sympatric population. The size of their beak is different. They have to adapt by forming different size of beak. Okay, so they need to eat different food to reduce competition and adaptation that favors eating different seed size. Okay, so the big size of the two species differ considerably on pinta Markina, which is an island where both species live. So kedua-dua burung ni dia duduk dekat kawasan yang sama, dekat pulau yang sama. So bila dia duduk pulau yang sama, sumber makanan pun sama lah kan. So bila sumber makanan yang sama, there's trees with different source of food. So there's the bigger nuts or the smaller nuts, the bigger fruits or the smaller fruits. So forties which have big, they will feed on bigger seed size, bigger fruits. Okay, but fully good ginosa, when they have smaller beak, they will find seed size that are smaller, kan, fruits that are smaller in size. Okay, so that is what we call it as character displacement yang terhasil disebabkan oleh resource partitioning. So resource partitioning dulu kan, haiwan tu akan adapt by living in different areas of the same habitat lah kan. So and then baru dia akan morph, baru dia akan bertukar dia punya ciri fizikal dia untuk adapt pada keadaan tersebut, untuk dapatkan sumber makanan yang tertentu, macam itulah. Okay, so that is on resource partitioning and also character displacement. It is due to an adaptation of organisms living in the same area and to reduce competition. So resource partitioning duduk kat tempat yang beza-beza, atas pokok, bawah pokok, tengah, kat dahan, atas on the ground. Okay, so lepas tu baru dia akan mengalami character displacement, changes its morphology in order for them to be able to feed on different food source. Okay, so that is on the concept of these two, character displacement and also resource partitioning. Okay. Okay. Ramai lagi tak masuk pagi ni saya tengok ada 45. 45 tolak saya 2, 43. So ramai lagi yang tak ada ni. So saya kalau macam ni tak ramai, nanti saya tak akan upload saya punya nota. Okay. Okay. So next, okay. So yang ni tadi kan, okay. So two outcomes of overlapping niche. Yang ini lepas tu kita akan tengok on predation. Okay. So predation. Kenapa dia pergi kepada dua? Sebab tadi adalah yang first one is on competition. Okay, so types of interaction when there's competition. Okay, competition for the same resources, for the same limiting resources. So interaction between abiotic component, interaction between living organisms. So now we are going to move on to the next concept, which is on predation, herbivory, parasitism, mutualism, and also commensalism. Okay. Mana predation? Okay. Okay, so all this concept you already know. Okay, so we're just going to go through this concept. Okay, so predation, it is a positive negative interaction which refers to an interaction in which one species is the predator, kills and eat the other species which is the prey. Okay, so these are the features of predators. So you have to know the features. Sometimes it can be asked. Okay, so predators have most acute senses which enables them to find and identify prey. Okay, so for example here we have rattlesnake. So they have heat sensing organs. So they can detect and they prey by using these heat sensing organs. Okay, and then the owl have large eyes. This helps to see the prey at night. Okay, so and they have feeding adaptations such as claws, fangs, and also poisons. So ular kan semua. So the lion here, it has claws, it has fangs. Okay, and then so they are very fast and agile. So some lie in some lie in ambush and disguised in the environment. So as you can see here from this diagram, so the lion the fur color is fairly similar to the grass surrounding it. So this helps um, the lion to disguise in its environment, preventing the prey from being able to see clearly that there's the predator. Yeah, so they disguise and then ambush. Okay, the prey. Okay, so that is on predation. Okay, so kita ada predators, and then these are the features of the prey. So now we are going to look at the features of the prey. How the prey able to survive in getting from preventing it from being eaten. Okay, so prey display various defensive adaptation. Ini adalah ciri predator kan untuk dapatkan makanan. So kita kena adil kan. So prey pun akan ada dia punya features dia untuk membolehkan dia survive. Okay, so the prey also have different adaptations so that they can survive, preventing them from being eaten by the predator. So there's two types of defensive adaptation. The first one is behavioral defenses. Second is morphological and physiological defense. So let's look at the first one, behavioral defenses, such as, for example, hiding. Okay, so hiding, so they can hide, so they flee. Dah kena kejar dengan lion tu tadi, takkan nak duduk je kan. So they flee kan, so they ran off. And then forming herds, okay, or schools of fish kan. So dia duduk dalam kumpulan yang besar. And then self-defense and also alarm calls. Again, so these are the type of behavioral defenses. And then the next one is animal have morphological and physiological defense adaptation. So this one is on morphology and physiological defense, such as, for example, here we have mechanical defense for the porcupine. They have sharp spines here. Can so the sharp spine when the porcupine is feeling they are under attack, so they will attack the predator using their sharp spines here. So dia porcupine ni dia bukan tembak dia punya spine tu, dia akan pergi charge kan, dia akan pergi charge membelakangkan diri dia pada predator tu. So dia akan apa that is the method of defensing itself for the porcupine. Dia punya spine tu tak ada tembak-tembak macam itulah. So dia akan lari membelakangkan diri dia and heading towards that predator. Okay, so when they are feeling attacked. So and then the next one is chemical defense, such as for example for the octopus. So they will release black ink, for example. So this helps them to be able to release from that dangerous situation. So bila dia releasekan ink tu, kawasan akan jadi gelap, so dia boleh flee lah kan. So and then the next one is aposematic coloration, warning coloration kan. So kalau jumpa katak yang warna-warni terang tu, jangan kata dia comel, cantik, awak pergi pegang, so it has poisons. Okay, warning coloration. And then cryptic coloration is camouflage. So all these terms you have to remember terms and also example. Aposematic is warning coloration. Cryptic coloration is camouflage. So as you can see, the color of this frog is the same as its surrounding rocks. Okay. And then we have here is Batesian mimicry, which is a harmless species mimics a harmful one. Again, so venomous. So this one is the actual snake. Again, so the actual snake is looking like this, the head and the eyes. Again, the patterns of the head is there for the snake. So this larva, hawk mammoth larva, will copy the same feature as the snake. When they have the same feature as the snake, as you can see, this is larva, ulat beluncas, kan. Tapi bila dia ada feature yang sama macam ular ni, bila ada predator nak datang makan ulat beluncas ni, burung tu akan ingat, ini ini ular ke ini beluncas tu kan. So sebab the feature of this larva is the same as this snake. This is what we call it as Partition mimicry. Okay, a harmless species mimics a harmful one. And then for the next one is Mullerian mimicry. So two unpalatable species mimic each other. So the two species are different species. There's one species that are poisonous, kan? Poisonous or distasteful lah kan. So when for example a predator such as a bird trying to eat this uh, bees, so the bird will get stung. Nanti bila bird tu jumpa another species that looks similar, so the bird will avoid from eating this the other species. So itu yang kita namakan dia sebagai Mullerian mimicry. So this is the explanation, sama je as so cryptic coloration or camouflage makes prey difficult to spot. So they have colors that are blending to its surrounding. Okay. And then we have aposematic coloration. So an animal with effective chemical defense often exhibit bright warning coloration, which is called as aposematic coloration. Predators are particularly cautious in dealing with prey that display such coloration. So aposematic is warning coloration. So they have bright colors, so as to warn the predators that so that the predator will not eat that certain species. Okay, so poison dart frog, it has bright colors as warning coloration. We call it as aposematic coloration. So this one here is Batesian mimicry. A palatable or harmless species mimics an unpalatable or a harmful one. A palatable or harmless species, this one here yang ulat beluncas tu tadi, mimics an unpalatable or harmful one, which is the snake here. Okay, so when disturbed, the larva of the hog mammoth puff up its head and thorax, which looks like the head of a small venomous snake. Ini yang ular yang sebetulnya, kan? Ular, kepala ular tu. So this ulat beluncas, bila dia rasa threatened, dia akan kembangkan dia punya kepala and thorax supaya dia punya kepala ni rupa macam snake. So whenever a predator sees this feature for that on that ulat beluncas ni, the larva, so the predator will not eat that larva. Okay, so that is Batesian mimicry. A harmless one mimics a harmful one. That is Batesian. Okay. So and then Mullerian, two or more unpalatable species resemble each other. The more unpalatable species there are, the faster predator learn to avoid them. So these two species, such as for example the cuckoo bee and then the yellow jacket. So these two bees, can so they have they can sting their prey. Sorry, the predator. Yeah, so kalau macam satu keadaan tu yang saya cerita tadi, kalau ada contohlah a predator trying to eat this cuckoo bee, so they got stung by the bee, and the second time when they see another bee that have different the same feature, so that predator will avoid eating this yellow jacket, sebab daripada pengalaman dia yang makan kuku bee tu dia kena sengat. Macam itulah. Okay. So that is Mullerian mimicry. Unpalatable species mimic each other, resemble each other. Okay, so dua-dua ada poison. Kan, so the predator will learn on how or not to eat the prey that have the same character. Okay. So next is on herbivory. Okay, so it is a positive, negative ecological interaction in which the organism eats part of the plant or algae. So the positive one is the herbivore lah, kan dia makan tumbuhan tu, they receive the negative effects of being eaten. Okay, that is herbivory. Okay. So and then parasitism. Okay, so parasitism, which is a positive negative interaction in which one organism, which is the parasite, benefit by feeding upon other species, which is the host, which is harmed. Okay, so some parasite live within the host, feeding on its tissue, while others feed on host external surface. Okay, so for example here is the mosquito feeding on sucking on blood, okay, of its host. And then kita ada kat sini macam contohnya cengkerik kan, so dia boleh store all these parasites. So ini parasite dia, kita namakan dia apa sekejap ada nama dia. um, horsehair worms ini. So are parasitic worms of the clade nematoida. Ulat apa? Dia parasite lah kan, bukan ulat, dia cacing. Okay, cacing roundworms. So the most famous trait of certain species of horsehair worms is the ability to alter the behavior of grasshopper and crickets to seek water, causing the host to drown itself to complete their life cycle. So um, apa nama roundworm ni dia ada pada intestine, digestive system of this serangga. Dia duduk dalam serangga tu, such as grasshopper, such as crickets kan. So so nanti dia akan menyebabkan satu keadaan yang mana grasshopper ni kena cari air kan. So dia akan cari air, bila cari air, so ulat ni bukan ulat, dia cacing ni akan keluar untuk membiak, untuk complete its life cycle ni adalah cacing. Okay so that is parasitism. Okay, so and then next one, mutualism. Okay, so mutualism, it is a positive interaction that benefit individual of both interacting species. The two species depend on each other for survival and reproduction. So example mutualism between acacia tree and also ants. Acacia tree provide habitat and food for the ants, and the ants in turn defend the acacia tree from herbivores. Okay, so pokok dengan semut ni dia saling benefit each other. So kalau pokok tu dia jadi tempat apa, sumber makanan, tempat apa nama ants ni duduk, ada habitat. So in return, kalau apa nama sebab ants sudah dapat benefit, dia akan bagi positive effect to the tree by defending that tree from being eaten by herbivore. Macam kerengga pada pokok lah kan. So kerengga pada pokok, so nanti kalau kita dekat dengan pokok tu, nanti kerengga tu akan gigit lah, macam tu kan. Okay, so this is mutualism, both receives benefit from the interactions. Okay, so then the next one is commensalism. So it is a positive null ecological interaction, okay, that benefit the individual of one species but neither harm or helps the individual of the other species. So for example here, the cattle egrets and also the African buffalo. So the cattle egrets, which is yang burung ni kan, feed on insects flushed out of the grass by the grazing buffalo. Okay, so the bird increases their feeding rates when following the buffalo, but the buffalo is not affected by the birds. Kalau dalam keadaan ni, kalau yang dapat benefit adalah burung tu. Tapi kalau buffalo tu dia tak kisah. Dia tak ada effect pun. Tak ada egrets tu, dia okay je. Okay. So that is positive zero ecological interaction. Dia macam ni, kalau buffalo ni kan dia makan rumput. Kan? So bila dia makan rumput, grazing on the grass, kat rumput ni ada serangga. Okay, ada serangga kan. So bila buffalo tu makan, serangga tu akan expose dan burung tu boleh lah makan serangga kan, makan serangga tersebut. So this is a positive zero interaction. Okay. Okay, so that's on interactions kan. So interaction between biotic biotic components. Okay, mana tadi kan? So interaction between biotic components, competition, predation, herbivory, parasitism, mutualism and commensalism. Competition tadi awak kena ingat dia all ada semua yang konsep tu tadi tu. So make sure that you know interspecific competition, kita ada competitive exclusion, and then kita ada fundamental realized niche, this is due to competition, and then we have resource partitioning, character displacement. uh, uh, okay, so those are the results of competition. Okay, then predation. So this is adaptation of the prey. Okay, so the adaptation of prey from preventing it from being eaten. Herbivory, parasitism, mutualism, commensalism. Okay, so so far okay, ada soalan tak? Okay,
Tak ada.
tak ada. Okay. So next, we are going to look at population ecology. Okay, so concept of population ecology and also population growth. Okay, so let's look at first the definition of population ecology. It is a subfield of ecology that concern with changes in population size and the factors that regulate population over time. Okay, so this is population ecology. Kita tengok apa faktor yang akan mempengaruhi population size at certain area, macam tu, certain parts of that we can found certain species, macam tu lah. Okay, so kita tengok apa faktor-faktor yang mempengaruhi population size of certain species living in certain area. Okay, so population size, the number of individuals in the population, that is population size. Ada berapa bilangan pokok dalam satu kawasan, ada dalam satu pokok tu ada berapa serangga, misalnya satu kawasan hutan tu ada berapa monyet, ada berapa squirrel. So that is population size. Okay, so population ecologies examine population dynamics, the interaction between biotic and abiotic factors that cause variation in population size. So due to the presence of maybe predators, so this will reduce the population size, can. And then abiotic factors also can influence the population size over time. Okay. So characteristics of population. So we have here population size, population density, population dispersion pattern. Okay. So population size. Population size, usually we use the symbol N. N is for population size, is the number of individual in a population. So kalau dalam formula, N tu adalah population size. So factors that affects population size are birth rate, okay, or we call it as natality. Berapa yang dilahirkan. So berapa yang mati, death rate or mortality. Immigration, berapa yang keluar daripada population tu, emigration berapa yang masuk, macam tu, okay, dalam population tersebut, betul tak? Immigration masuk, emigration keluar, terbalik, kan, immigration masuk, emigration keluar. Alright. So these are the factors that influence the population size. Berapa yang dilahirkan, berapa yang mati, berapa yang masuk, berapa yang keluar daripada population tersebut. This determines the population size of a species living in certain area. Okay, so factor that increase population size, natality, the birth rate, which is the total live birth to the total population in a particular area over specified period of time. Dalam jangka masa tertentu, dalam masa contohnya setahun, kan, berapa birth rate untuk population tersebut. And then mortality. Kita pergi yang increase dulu, yang increase population size. And then we have immigration. Immigrants lah yang masuk, kan, pendatang yang masuk. Okay, so immigration, the number of organism moving into area occupied by the population. So these two increase population size. It increase the number of individual in that population. And then we have another factors that decrease population size, which is mortality. Mortality is the death rate, which is the ratio of the total number of death to the total population. Okay, so berapa yang mati dalam certain period of time. Okay, and then is emigration. So the number of individual moving out of the area occupied by the population increase and decrease. Increase birth rate and immigration, decrease mortality and emigration. So this is, for example, a population of bird living in certain island. So birth berapa banyak yang terlahir, berapa ramai yang masuk. So this increase population size, the upper one here. And then the factors that decrease population size, death and also emigration. Okay, keluar, migrate keluar. Okay. So next is population density. Kita habiskan sikit lagi ni. Population density. Population density is the number of individuals per area. Okay, so berapa padat dalam satu kawasan tu, berapa padat yang organism tu ada dalam area tersebut. Okay, so the number of individual per unit area, density is, this is the formula, population size over area. So example here, we have 50 butterfly in the garden of 10 square meters. So what is the population size? 50 bahagi 10, 5 lah, 5 butterflies per square meter. So this is population density. Okay, so we have population size, population density, and then the next one is population dispersion pattern. Okay, so the dispersion pattern is how individuals are spaced within the geographic area. So we have here a clumped dispersion pattern, clumped, uniform or random. Kalau dalam satu kawasan tu taburan populasi tu, organism tu, okay, clumped, uniform ataupun random. Kita tengok So this is clumped. And for example, for elephants lah kan, so clump, organism grouped together, the most common distribution in nature. So clump, dia duduk, organism ni duduk dalam group, kan, dia duduk dalam group. So that is what we call it as clumped. And then we have uniform, organism are evenly spaced, okay, such as for example here, this bush here, okay, and then we have random organism are arranged in no particular patterns. Ada dekat sini, dekat sini, dekat sini, dekat mana-mana, merata lah ada. Okay, so that is population dispersion. So these are the characteristics of population ecology, population size, and then we have population density, and then we have population dispersion pattern. Okay, so we stop up until this slide demographic, then we are going to continue later. Okay, yang ini kita akan sambung maybe time lecture hari Rabu. Esok hari Jumaat saya akan sambung balik pada lecture photosynthesis. Okay, so far do you have any question regarding our lecture today?